Hi, this is Regina Davis coming to you from NARUC's annual meeting and education conference in San Antonio, Texas. And joining us here today is Rachelle Chong, who sits on the board with one of our sponsors, Anterix. And I'd like to thank you first for the sponsorship of Anterix, and we really do appreciate the support that we get from sponsors like Anterix. But you also have a lot of knowledge about NARUC because you are a former commissioner from the great state of California, and you've also served as a commissioner with the FCC. Now, I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you which role was more challenging, but I do think that it has provided some unique insights for you with both of those experiences.
Yes, that's true. I will tell you that I was an FCC commissioner when I was quite young. I was 34 years old.
Wow.
And I was the very first Asian American commissioner to have served there. But we had great issues at that time, primarily the Telecom Act of 1996. Mm-hmm. And also we were doing important things like digital TV and also licensing many new wireless systems, including PCS, satellite cable, and things like that.
I'm sure that some of those issues probably foreshadowed what we're seeing right now.
That's right. Increased competition was the most important thing. And then secondly, we didn't really know the internet was going to be as big as it turned out to be.
Right, who knew?
Right, or that the iPhone would be invented and the app economy. No clue back then, but I think what it taught me as a commissioner is you can't predict where technology is going to go, particularly in this really exciting space of communications, video, and broadband.
So let me ask you this. A lot of times when we're at these meetings and we talk about what types of sessions we're going to have, and there seems to be like a distinct separation between telecom issues and electricity issues. But I'm wondering, is there a perfect marriage of the two? Do we have to look at them as separate? And when I was looking at your recent paper, it brought to mind, like, yes, there are opportunities to really combine these two areas and these two sectors.
I could not agree more. One of the things I will say right off the bat is it's important for people to understand that the electric grid is very aged at this point. That people say, oh, if Thomas Edison came into a switch at a electric utility, he would generally know how it worked. Now, in telecom, it's completely different. The technology has advanced very swiftly, starting in about the 70s, 80s. Mm-hmm. And then with the internet, that changed everything too. So now what we have seen as a big trend in electric utilities is how do we smarten the electric grid?
Right.
How do we take advanced technology, introduce it in ways that will increase efficiencies in terms of knowing more about what's going on in their vast systems at once. Mm-hmm. Number two, it will help them spot trouble right away. So, for example, in the California wildfires,
yes,
San Diego Gas and Electric has found a way that they can sense when a line is falling, send that message back, and then turn off the electricity before the line hits the ground so that a wildfire could be prevented. In other ways, we can also have more operational knowledge, situational awareness mm-hmm. of what's happening in the distribution and transmission system. So all of these things are examples of how electric utilities could do their job better by introducing more technology to it. But the problem is electric utilities are very conservative, and they haven't really embraced technology the way other sectors have. Mm-hmm. And so that's the challenge, I think, for electric utilities now, is figuring out how they take advanced technology, broadband, telecom, and bring it into their system in a way that they feel secure about it, but that can help them be more efficient and reliable.
So the example that you just mentioned about sensing and the wildfires. I was reading your paper about the invisible infrastructure, and I found it really quite fascinating. And you point to these technologies. Can you give us another example of the technologies, and also talk about the benefits and the costs that are related to implementing these technologies?
Sure. One of the things I wrote about recently in a paper, which we're giving out, is the fact that all this advanced technology is very positive and has many benefits for the electric utilities, as I just mentioned. However, the electric utilities are really flummoxed by the idea that they would actually purchase or lease wireless spectrum to be the platform on which they run all of these smart networks and systems to do all these applications for their operations. So companies like Anterix are on the verge of getting private licensed wireless spectrum dedicated for the electric utility sector and other critical information infrastructure companies. And they are, the electric utilities are freaking out about the idea that they should either purchase or lease spectrum from a company like Anterix. But what I have been trying to explain is that it's your infrastructure, it's the network upon which all of these apps are going to run.
Right.
And there is a cost to that. It's an input, just like everything else that you're buying. So as an example, when you're at home watching cable TV on your cable provider's system, an input to that has been that they have to be regulated. They have put in all this infrastructure all over your city and then connecting it to an internet point of presence so that they can communicate and get all the data, the program that you're going to watch. Similarly, if you then pick up your iPad and send a message on the internet to someone, your cable company has contracted with other companies to complete the traffic and deliver it to where you're going. So that network underlying those services is what you're paying for as part of your subscription. So likewise, Anterix will be obtaining this spectrum probably within a few months from the FCC. And at that time, they will be offering to electric utilities the ability to have a private licensed wireless network to run all these really mission critical types of applications for them.
So when you offer it, will you use the California wildfires as a prime example of a benefit?
Yes. So right now, as you may know, there's been a number of years of terrible wildfires in California. Because of the drought, we have a lot of brush built up. And when there are bad windstorms, Santa Ana winds, but just generally bad windstorms, also happening in Northern California, the trees fall or the wind, hits a line and the electric line falls. And it has been found in some occasions to have caused massive wildfires. So one of the things that Anterix is talking to the California utilities about is the potential for a shared network that they could share the costs, and then they would be able to deploy sensors to predict, for example, weather, how much moisture, how much wind, what the temperature is. Also, these cameras could be deployed so if a fire starts, the camera zooms in and knows it's there, immediately sends the latitude and longitude to the fire officials so they can immediately send a helicopter out and dump water on it. And they also can then predict with amazing accuracy the direction of the fire and how fast it will grow using a program called Wildfires, developed by UC San Diego and Scenic and California OES, Office of Emergency Services. So essentially, all that data can be deployed at once to prevent the fire, put the fire out once it starts, predict the path so that we can evacuate people on the right time frame to get them out of harm's way. So these are the types of benefits that you can see that would flow out of these types of systems.
So for the regulator, what questions should regulators be asking? What role should the regulator be playing in this?
Well, one important thing that I want to point out is a regulator should be asking the utility, for your network, are you using licensed technology? Because if you are using a technology that's connected to a commercial provider, say AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, people like that, companies like that, they are connected to the public internet, so they are not as cyber secure. So that's the first thing. The second thing the regulator should ask is, am I preventives for my electric utility to upgrade to these systems that have many benefits? So, for example, most electric utilities get funded on a 3-year, 4-year rate base cycle.
Right.
So if you are California, right now they need these things right now to save lives and property. So you might want to consider doing a disaster relief docket that's out of cycle, so that all utilities in your state could come in, and if they can make the case for these types of disaster prevention networks, allow them to do that out of rate case cycle. The last thing I would say is there are some old-fashioned rate base accounting rules, and some of them prevent like a spectrum lease from being put into the rate base. And so one should really look at your accounting rules to make sure that they're up to speed with new technology. And a similar example I'll use is it used to be that electric utilities would buy, hard servers, physical servers,
yes.
to put their data on because they wanted it to be very secure.
Right.
But now, of course, there are very secure iCloud technologies for storage. And banks use them, so we know they must be pretty good. So they had gotten changes in the regulatory accounting rules to allow them to store on non-physical iCloud servers and put that into rate base. So those are the types of changes that regulators need to affirmatively think about putting in place so that the electric utilities have all the right incentives to make their grids smarter.
Well, it seems like there's going to be a lot of dialogue around this technology.
Yes. I think there's no question. I can tell you that the electric utilities are very interested in this. And I'll tell you another reason. They see some additional revenue opportunities if they smarten their system. So if they have extra fiber, for example, they will be able to lease it out to a city, for example, to do smart traffic signaling or connect their libraries or their schools.
Okay, very good.
So there's lots of other things they can do.
Yes, that was going to be my next question. What other applications, beyond wildfires?
Oh,
so
yes.
It's not limited.
Oh, no. A lot of it is really just operational efficiencies. They'll be able to know if did a line fall down, like a car hits a pole and the line goes down, they'll be able to immediately see an anomaly in the system and be able to know exactly where it is, and then they can quickly send a lineman out to check it and repair it. And so those types of efficiencies are really important. Otherwise, if the line went down, they would have to turn off the electricity to a big swath of people.
Right.
And then they'd have to wait a long time while they're searching around, figuring out what line went down. So you can imagine the operational efficiencies that you can achieve with this kind of intelligence into your system.
Well, this has been a very enlightening discussion. I'm going to ask one final question.
Absolutely.
And that is, what is the value that you think people get out of from participating in NARUC meetings?
Oh, gosh. Well, I can tell you that when I was a California Public Utilities Commissioner, I really looked forward to coming to NARUC. And the reason is I always learned things here, very cutting edge things that were going on. I would have really lively debate with my fellow commissioners because, we have a way of looking at things, but a commissioner from Alaska or Wisconsin or Florida has a very different perspective, and I learned from that. And then finally, I think the joy of meeting people from all over the nation, if not the world, was all the fun of NARUC, and I really loved it. I feel like I'm still a member of the family.
Sure, of
and
course.
when I come back, it's always great to see.
Yes, our emeritus
everybody.
commissioners are always part of the NARUC family.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, and this has been a really informative conversation, and I hope that we do continue this dialogue in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Regina.
Thank you.
You're welcome.